Welcome to MuggleCast, your weekly ride into the wizarding world. I'm Andrew.
I'm Eric.
Micah.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Vanessa.
Hi, Vanessa from Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good, good. Tell us about yourself and tell us about the podcast.
So I am one half of the podcast Harry Potter and the Sacred Text with my co-host Casper Turkile. And we are a chapter-by-chapter read-through of Harry Potter in which we treat Harry Potter as if it was the Bible. So it is like a Bible study podcast, but we use Harry Potter instead of the Bible.
Interesting.
That's great.
It's a lot more fun.
Yeah. When did you become a Harry Potter fan?
You know, I was really late. It's terrible. I was in my 20s and started dating this guy who was like, I don't think this relationship will work if you don't read the Harry Potter books. And I was like, I've been meaning to get around to them.
Mm.
And so I started reading them and I was like, okay, these are really good.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, we swapped books. I made him read Jane Eyre and he made me read Harry Potter. And Jane Eyre is now one of his favorite books. It was like such a good swap.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I assume he hosts Jane Eyre and the Sacred Text.
The Sacred Text, he does. Everybody go listen to that fake podcast. It's great. Yeah, and like obviously it changed my life, but I'll just say, like, the more I read the books, the more I love them. Like, I just keep obviously rereading them. I'm on my 5th time now.
Yeah.
Hot take, guys. The Harry Potter books are like really good. They're well done.
You're sure of this after reading them for the 5th time?
I am like very committed to this great idea of mine that the Harry Potter books are good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you on. And
I'm so
you
happy
mentioned
to be here.
Good. You mentioned that you do a chapter-by-chapter reread. This week we are doing our own chapter-by-chapter, Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 10, Luna Lovegood. But first, some Muggle mail. And actually, before those emails, just want to say thank you to everybody who participated in Saturday's MuggleCast holiday giveaway on Twitter. Micah was running it behind the scenes, and you were having a blast, weren't you?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And right off the bat, I asked you, Andrew, I said, you know what? This first prize, we were giving away the Goblet of Fire Illustrated Edition. It's not fun to just give away one. Let's give away 3. And it became a recurring trend throughout the course of the giveaway because, you know, it's fun. It's the holiday spirit. You should be in the giving mood. And I tried to be funny and creative in the conversation that was going on. I know Eric loved one tweet in particular. Isn't that
Micah
right?
got really dirty about Arthur Weasley and the thrift store. Like, I was like, whoa, it's Saturday morning. Oh my gosh, it's too early for this. Of course, I loved it, but also,
I loved all the tweets, Micah. It's just, your energy, man. It was a well-run campaign.
Yeah, the prize that we were giving away in that particular tweet was the puzzle from the New York Puzzle Company.
Ah, yes.
The winner could pick their choice of a puzzle. And I just said, be mindful that these puzzles are harder than Mr. Weasley in a Muggle thrift store. And it was just a good opportunity to have some fun.
Remind us. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you to everybody who participated at twitter.com/MuggleCast. That was a lot of fun, like Micah said. So I'm sure we'll do another one in the future. And we'll have to kind of maybe make sure Micah doesn't run up the bill so high like he did yesterday.
I'm so disturbed by the idea that Arthur Weasley might have a penis.
Right? Because he's like your dad, right? You know, it's like, ugh.
He's like a Ken doll. Everything is smooth.
There you go.
On there.
Okay.
Well, then how
used
did he
it.
father 7 children?
Right. I was going to say he's used it at least 7 times.
Immaculate conception, guys. I am a 12-year-old of maturity when it comes to things like this. Ugh.
Well, if we apologize for sullying that.
Yes. How dare you?
Or Micah apologizes for sullying that.
Wait, 7 or 6? Because don't Fred and George count as one?
Oh, there you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
Thank God. Okay, I can live with that. He had sex 6 times.
Only 6 times.
Okay.
We got some emails in regards to our holiday gift guide episode. That was 2 weeks ago, which was a lot of fun to do, by the way. And everybody really enjoyed our recommendations, it seems. So we're glad people liked that episode. Sarah said, I just listened to the latest podcast about gifts and games. I wanted to recommend Fantastic Beasts Perilous Pursuit. You play as a team and try to capture different beasts. You play as one of the core 4 from Fantastic Beasts and roll dice to try and capture beasts like the Niffler or Thunderbird. We have played with people that knew nothing about Harry Potter or Fantastic Beasts and they still had fun. Highly recommend. So thank you, Sarah, for that.
I'm trying to figure out if I've played this game. I think I might have. The Perilous Pursuit. Yeah, I thought it was really fun. The next email comes from Danny, who says that the massive Lego Harry Potter castle we talked about on our gift guide episode, they say, it's amazing. My favorite rooms are probably Umbridge's office, it's so pink, or the giant chess set, or moving staircases with portraits behind. The little sets on the side, like the Whomping Willow that moves with the tiny Ford Anglia, and Hagrid's hut are also very well designed. The Great Hall also has like stained glass windows, and there are Dementors flying over the castle, and the Hungarian Horntail, and the 4 Hogwarts founders. You mentioned the size of the people being a problem, but it really isn't. To me, it just made it more unique, and you can still tell who the people are. I have loved figuring out where to put all the people to make it lots of different scenes from the movies. The whole thing is just so magical, and it's so incredible how they were able to combine scenes and rooms from all of the books into one set. The building process itself was also absolutely incredible. It took me 16 hours over the course of 3 days while I listened to podcasts. Yeah, yours and others nonstop. It is now sitting on a desk in my room and is the first thing I see every time I walk in, and it just makes me so happy. This is by far the best Harry Potter merch I own and probably will ever own. No matter where I move, it will be with me. If you can afford it, trust me, it's worth it.
That's great. Thank you, Danny, for sharing that. I think you just inspired some people to buy it themselves.
Yeah, it's $400, FYI, is the price.
The real question, Eric, is did you go to Phoenix during Thanksgiving to help our other listener build theirs?
I did not. However, I did reach out with some helpful tips, and hopefully I've actually been meaning to check in. Our listener, Mariah, wrote in and said that all of her family that was there for the day left before pitching in to complete the set. So she was all alone and didn't get to build it.
Well, if you're nice to Micah, he might continue to be generous with the MuggleCast credit card and just buy that for you. So just play your cards right.
That could have been another good prize to give away. We didn't think about that.
But $400 Lego set
is a little steep. We did give away as the final prize a standard print from Mino Lima. So
that's pricey too.
That's not going to take you 16 hours over the course of 3 days. It's just going to require you to purchase a frame and hang it in your apartment or your home. So a lot of the items that we did talk about on episode 444, we in turn then gave away on this Twitter holiday giveaway. And it's very interesting to see in some cases how certain items are now sold out. I'd like to think that we had something to do with that.
Micah brought a lot of business to the puzzle company. He's not even kidding. Like half of those puzzles are sold out now.
Right. And by the way, those puzzles are really hard. I know Eric talked about it when you made that recommendation. I'm still working through the Shrieking Shack, and they take probably close to the same amount of time as putting together this Lego Hogwarts castle does.
Yeah.
Before we get started with chapter by chapter, wanted to let you know that today's episode of MuggleCast is brought to you by a company that Dumbledore and Dobby would love, Bombas. Socks are the #1 most requested clothing item in homeless shelters, and Bombas is on a mission to change that. They've created the most comfortable socks in the history of feet, and for every pair of socks purchased, Bombas donates a pair to someone in need. Designed with special comfort innovations, colors, patterns, lengths, and styles, Bombas are perfect for the whole family. You can get your hands on a pair of Bombas socks, and your feet will thank you. To date, Bombas has donated over 20 million pairs of socks and counting. They're made from super soft natural cotton, and every pair is designed with arch support, a seamless toe, and a cushioned footbed that's supportive but not too thick. My new favorites are the merino wool socks, designed to be breathable, dry, and never itchy with just the right amount of thickness. Speaking from personal experience, I ordered a couple of these pairs just a few weeks ago, and I can't tell you how comfortable they are, especially in these winter months. They keep your feet nice and warm. With tons of different colors, patterns, lengths, and styles, Bombas makes the perfect gift for everyone on your holiday list this season. And don't forget, for every pair that you purchase, one is donated to somebody in need. You can save 20% on your first purchase when you shop at bombas.com/MuggleCast. That's bombas.com/MuggleCast to save 20%.
All right, it's time now for chapter by chapter, and this week we are discussing chapter 10 of Order of the Phoenix, Luna Lovegood. And as always, we'll start with our 7-word summary. And Vanessa, how this is going to work is we're actually each going to contribute a word to create a sentence.
Got it.
So, you can go ahead.
Chaos.
Reigns.
During.
The
Journey.
2.
Hogwarts.
Yay, a sentence.
That's such a good team effort.
Yeah.
Chaos is a great first word, really starting off the
Yeah, we've never used
Better
that
than
before.
Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been lazy and just said Harry.
This chapter, anyway, I'm going to hold on my analysis till later.
No. You
So much chaos.
jump in whenever.
It starts with Fred and George pushing Ginny down the 2 flights. 2 flights of stairs.
That's really mean.
It's terrible. As some of you know, I fell down like 6 stairs at LeakyCon,
Yeah.
and I tore
Oh, God.
all the ligaments in my ankle. So poor Ginny.
Did Fred and George push you down?
Yes, George pushed me down, and by
gosh.
George I mean I was texting while running downstairs.
So the chapter begins with Harry having one of his crazy dreams, and I guess we should just refresh that at the end of the last chapter, because it's been a couple weeks, Harry had walked in on Mrs. Weasley, who was having a terrible experience with the boggart. And in Harry's dream, his parents are weaving in and out, but they're never speaking to him. Mrs. Weasley is crying over Kreacher's dead body, with Hermione and Ron looking on wearing crowns. And then it wraps up with that corridor ending in a locked door yet again. So the corridor's there, the locked door is there. That's a recurring theme. But there's some weird stuff going on in this dream. I'm wondering what Harry took before he went to bed.
Well, it was a rough day, that previous day. And I think wearing crowns is interesting because it sounded like by the end of the last chapter, things were put in perspective for him. He was like, oh, okay, it's not a big deal that Ron and Hermione are prefects because there's a lot more serious things to worry about. And yet he's still dreaming about them being in a higher position than he is. So he's not really over it.
Yeah.
Do we make anything of Kreacher's dead body? We know he survives.
Is it a
that's-
premonition about Dobby? You know how like
Yeah.
Mm.
The casualties of war, like the indirect casualties, maybe, I think, with war looming. That's Kreacher's the one I can't figure out, but I had the idea that Lily and James walking around in the background, never speaking to Harry, is kind of representative of how Dumbledore is in the background here and there, never speaking directly to Harry. And we know that Harry sees Dumbledore as kind of a guide or a would-be father figure, if only Dumbledore would pay him attention. So I think maybe that's like the representation of his Dumbledore anxiety.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with isolation. And I like the idea that, Mrs. Weasley crying over Kreacher's dead body is a representation of how, nobody treats Kreacher very well in life. So this idea that somebody only gets, the sort of positive treatment that they deserve in death.
Oh.
And that could just be sort of part of this whole manifestation of Harry's anxieties about isolation.
Yeah. That's a thoughtful answer. I was just going to say Harry wants Kreacher dead.
Also,
It's
dreams are
fantasy.
weird. Dreams are just weird.
Yeah.
Sometimes weird things happen in dreams and you're like, what was that about?
I do not think that Harry wishes Kreacher dead, though. I will come out swinging on that.
Right.
No, yeah.
But what do I think? Yeah, I guess I just agree that like sometimes dreams are like mashups of songs that don't go together, and you're like, what?
Hmm.
Yeah, and you actually had just mentioned everybody's in a terrible rush. It always seems to be the case that whenever they're trying to catch the Hogwarts Express to go back to school, something is always up. They're always laid out the door. It's not as if they don't know what day and time it leaves every single year. But suffice it to say, people are getting knocked down the stairs and pushed out of the way, and we're about to embark on this journey to King's Cross, and somebody wants to join in. And
Woof woof.
this is a questionable move on the part of Sirius to get outside of Grimmauld Place and to really get into a public setting. And there's not a whole lot of pushback on Sirius, and I wonder if it's just because everybody is in such a hurry to get the kids to King's Cross. And Molly turns to Sirius before they leave, and she says, "On your own head be it." And I wondered if this was another one of those statements that could be considered an omen of what is to come for Sirius. It's not necessarily foretelling of his death, but it's kind of like, hey, like, this is on you. Like, you're making this decision and you have to suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's representative of the rash behavior that we see from Sirius throughout the book that does ultimately result in his death.
The question of whether or not Sirius should have gone, though, is an interesting one, because if nobody really does know that Sirius can transform into a dog, which we learn later people do know that, including Draco and Lucius, then it's not much of a problem. Right? Because what would the risk be there if nobody truly knew? And I think the assumption was that nobody truly knew.
That was the assumption. I just think of Sirius's mental state being sort of forced out of the house. I mean, we know it's his choice to come dog Harry, but ultimately he has been cooped up for so long, like Dumbledore asking him to remain. Sort of the rest of the Order members can come and go as they please, but Sirius has really felt like a prisoner, not for the first time in his life, in his own home. And I just think of his mental state, and you know, I actually found a lot of joy in reading that Sirius is, I don't know, chasing pigeons around for and you know, local neighborhood cats for Harry's amusement. I thought it was a really touching moment between Godfather and Godson. And so, although in the book it's characterized as very reckless by pretty much everyone, I found it to be really touching between the two of them.
But I completely agree that it's a very endearing moment. And that is actually a safe moment, right? Where he's behaving as a dog. Right. But even Harry says, you know, like, stop it, like, behave like a dog. And I do think that this is like high school Sirius. And again, this isn't his fault, right? He went to prison shortly after high school. And we know that traumatic experiences can emotionally stunt us. But and I don't want to call him emotionally stunted, but like he's behaving recklessly in a strutty way that strikes me as a very immature, like thumbing his nose at authority, intentionally being like, I can get away with this. I can get away with anything. And and I see Molly's comment really as an omen of like, you are so reckless and this is going to come and get you. I am washing my hands of you, which is something that I feel pretty hard, right? Casper, my co-host, we've had this fight. He doesn't wear a bike helmet and bikes everywhere.
Oh, Casper.
I know. And I, in a very harsh moment of our friendship, because I was so desperately anxious about seeing him without a helmet, I was like, if you die because you're not wearing a helmet, like, I won't even grieve you. Like, I'm I know we got into a big fight about it and I obviously didn't mean it, but I was just so mad at how reckless he was being that I was like, do you know what? Screw you. And so I just really feel for Molly in this moment of like, I love you and Harry loves you and you are just like not being safe.
Yeah.
And it is frustrating to watch someone you love not take care in those moments.
Yeah. And Molly's got enough to worry about. So Sirius also coming along is just not what she needs right now.
Right.
I think Sirius also just should have played more coy out in the field. He should not have been jumping up on Harry, licking Harry, playing with Harry. Like, do that to Ron, Hermione, or somebody else, because people are going to notice that and be like, why is that dog so into Harry? Did he get a dog over the summer?
Yeah.
Does anybody he really love able to turn into a dog? Like, it's too much.
Right. We have to assume at this point that Peter Pettigrew has passed along information to Voldemort and to the Death Eaters as to the fact that Sirius can transform into a dog, and this just puts him front and center. And we learn later, obviously, that Malfoy was aware of this, and that's information that's valuable to the Death Eaters. And I think this is the starting point of them being able to find a way to lure Harry ultimately away from Hogwarts at the end of the book. They know that Sirius is alive and well, and he's with the Order, and he's with Harry, and Harry has this connection to him. So I think this was a big misstep on the part of Sirius. And
yeah, it's a great point.
Molly, though, Molly does kind of mess up a little bit, whether she says it in a soft tone or a loud tone. I know you wrote here that she whispered it, but she does say Sirius's name.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a huge mistake on her part. I don't care, what the setting is. They're out in public. They're on the track, or the platform rather, and she should be smarter than that.
Yeah. I mean, using aliases is not, cannot at this point be a foreign concept to her, and he's already adopted the name Snuffles for when he's a dog.
Right.
Like, it's built in. Just call him Snuffles.
Or like pain in the butt.
Yeah.
It's not like she,
Yeah.
just call him a swear word.
Yeah.
We've all had that frustrating moment with our dog where we're like, hey.
Yeah, me every day, pretty much.
My partner doesn't have a middle name, and so I make up different middle names for when I'm mad at him.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Do you call him
been
Sirius?
No, it's been Chester for a little while now.
Chester. It's a good holiday one, I feel.
I'm like, Peter Chester. It's mostly when he obliterates me at a game, but
Oh, yeah.
how dare he?
One other bit of information that we get as everybody's arriving at King's Cross Station, Moody mentions that Sturgis Podmore is MIA, and this is the second time in the past week or so that he's failed to report for duty. And Moody's going to make sure that that information gets back to Dumbledore. And that's just a little note that's dropped in there by J.K. Rowling that we should be concerned probably for good old Sturgis.
But
in some way.
But Moody doesn't seem too concerned, does he? He just thinks that this could be another Mundungus situation where the guy is just sucking. Right?
No, I mean, it definitely could be, though Sturgis seems to have a little bit higher standing than somebody like Mundungus, and maybe Moody just knows him, and he's like, oh, Sturgis, up to no good. I don't know. Like,
Sleepy Sturgis.
We should be concerned for him.
Yeah, well, that's my point. It's just, it doesn't seem like Moody is very alarmed at the fact that he's missing for a second time. Like, in this setting, in this situation, they should be highly concerned when somebody like Sturgis is missing. That should set off all the red alarms and red flags, and Sirius shouldn't be running around because there's danger afoot. Some of them are being caught now.
Yeah, there's also just like a weird, like, have they learned nothing from the Bertha Jorkins incident? Like, there's just a lot of chill around missing people in the wizarding world that I don't quite understand. If like someone is 10 minutes late, and this could be like my Jewish upbringing, but like someone's 10 minutes late, I assume they're dead. So like, I don't, and there's like apparition, and like there are a million ways to communicate.
Yeah.
Right.
Why would someone just not show up? Why are people so relaxed about that?
Yeah.
It's very
Moody's
strange.
just like, oh, I'll get around to telling Dumbledore.
Yeah.
I'll find out at some point. In the meanwhile, let's all stay out in the open.
Yeah.
This was the 90s, everybody. There was no cell phones. This is mid-90s communication.
But they can send patronuses. I like patroni. They can send patroni being like, hello, can't make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's very true. Very, very true. This scene also reminded me very much as like a precursor to the Seven Potters and Deathly Hallows, because everybody's arriving with different people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys got that sense as well.
Definitely whenever the Order's on the move, it does feel like it's written like in a clever way. Even this chapter, she's talking about not only who's coming with who to the King's Cross station, but on the train as well. People are moving compartments and specific pets are with each person. Like somebody's carrying pigs, somebody's carrying Hedwig, somebody's carrying Crookshanks, and like it's all very meticulously detailed. So I did notice that about the writing in this chapter, that it like seems to be very strategic, although the stakes are ultimately very low.
Let's talk about the train then.
Let's.
So the trio finally get on board, and Ron and Hermione are like, sorry, Harry, we gotta go be prefects.
You did a perfect Jim Dale doing Hermione right there. Sorry, Harry.
Yeah, and poor Harry, he's never traveled without Ron on the Hogwarts Express.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for some separation anxiety. Like he hasn't had to go with that at all for this book.
You really do feel bad for Harry here, because he's watching his friends advance in their lives. They've got this cool official thing going on, and he's left behind. And it reminded me of how social media can give us this type of anxiety, where you see people excelling in their careers or doing something really cool in their life, and you're just like, oh, here I am just double tapping this photo on my couch because I have nothing better to do with my life. And Ron and Hermione have something, like I said, official to do. Harry has never gotten a cool promotion like this before. Everything he has done is cool, but it's because Voldemort is out to kill him. Like, he didn't get promoted in some way because he's really talented, whereas Ron and Hermione are getting this type of promotion. So I can see why Harry feels bad and feels left behind, and he might be worried that he won't excel later in life like Ron and Hermione might.
That's a good question. I'm trying to think, like, I guess I see being made Seeker a promotion, but it happened so long ago, you know? Like, it was based on his talent, but and he was the youngest one in a century. But it's so long ago that he doesn't see it as being like, I'm special. Like, it's easy to gloss over, I think, your own prestige and your own accomplishments when being confronted with the successes of others. And I think you're right to point out, Andrew, like the end of the last chapter where he's like, everything's fine with me and Ron and Hermione, but still on the inside, he's still, it's like a little kick to the gut every time he sees them like go off, and the fact that he's alone and is mourning it, you know, all over again.
A lot of people want more, right? They always want more.
Yeah.
And the getting promoted to Seeker is a lifetime ago, like you said. So
I actually don't think that Harry wants to be a prefect. I think he just feels left out, because he even notes when Ron and Hermione get their letters that he'd never really thought about it before. I think he just feels left out because his two best friends are getting this prestige, and it doesn't really quite matter what it is.
Yeah.
It's just that they're getting something that he isn't. And, you know, Harry's young, he's 15, and he's spent a lot of his life feeling isolated, from living with the Dursleys, who treated him like garbage, to transitioning into the wizarding world, where he's all of a sudden this very public celebrity who doesn't quite get the amount of privacy he might like. So he's lived two very, different sides of that spectrum. And now the people he's closest with have this experience handed to them that kind of separates them from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he knows how nice the prefect bathroom is.
That's true.
And like, what's better? Oh my God, what's better than a nice bathroom?
Not a lot.
I'm not going to lie. I remember reading that chapter and I was like, I want to use this bath.
Totally.
That can be in our forthcoming Harry Potter Airbnb, Laura. A really nice bathroom for
That'd be
a
amazing,
prefect.
but it has to have a bathtub that's deep enough to swim in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great, and
That's important.
and hold a golden egg under.
I think J.K. Rowling straight up stole that idea from Pee Wee Herman, though. Pee Wee Herman had a bathtub big enough to swim in, and it was
Oh
awesome.
man.
None of you are old enough for the 80s? No? Okay.
No.
I mean, I watched him a little bit.
Yeah.
So good. Anyway,
I watched Pee Wee's Playhouse
Yes,
when I was
that
very
one.
little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, in one of the movies, I don't remember which one, he has a bathtub big enough to swim in.
That's
That's
awesome.
great.
That's so awesome.
This will be in JKR's memoirs that she was inspired by
Mhm.
Pee Wee Herman
It would-
for the prefect's bathroom.
Yeah,
But
hopefully just on that one thing. though.
Aw, wah,
I got the idea of Horcruxes from Pee Wee Herman.
wah. Yeah.
The only other thing that I would add here is I think Harry primarily feels the way he does, though, just because he's being separated from Ron and Hermione. He really hasn't gotten a chance to spend a whole lot of time with them, and this is like customary. It's something that happens every year. They get to ride the train to school together and talk and hang out. And while I do think there is something to be said for the fact that they're prefects, I do also think it's just a matter of, hey, I'm not going to get the opportunity to spend a couple hours with my friends before I get to school. And it's just disrupting what has been kind of a normal thing for him.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I mean, he's faced a lot of that so far in this book, and it's just another example of him being isolated.
Yeah.
And Laura, I agree with you about it's not about Harry wanting to become a prefect. To me, it's about Ron and Hermione are moving forward in their lives. They're moving on.
Mhm.
They're advancing. And like, what is Harry? How is Harry advancing? He's not.
The interesting thing is that there's always I love these chapters where they're going to Hogwarts. It's just because it's like such an event, right? So like in many cases that, they're on the train and J.K. Rowling's having to write different occurrences. It's kind of like how she has to make each Quidditch match a little bit different. Each Hogwarts Express train ride to Hogwarts is different for the company that Harry keeps, the circumstances that happen, and it's different every year. And this is the year where like Harry, of course, meets Luna, but like he is just having to bear more of it than usual alone. And that just further exemplifies, I think, the theme of this book of Harry kind of being singled out for who he is, or singled out just in general. And it's kind of very fitting that he is alone for part of this journey, or at least in his head for it, because he spends the whole book kind of in his head, and he's not really able to connect to Ron and Hermione like he normally would in general, but then also on the train because they're away.
Yeah, and also the Hogwarts Express is a place where the trio generally tend to do a lot of conversing and plotting and just like decompressing about what to expect in the coming year. And we see this later on in the series where there's a lot of weirdness happening on, like with Draco, and they spend a lot of time shut in their cabin talking about how they're going to deal with this. So now not only is Harry separated, but the people that he really wants to talk to about how am I going to deal with this aren't there.
Take some extra rides on the train during the school year. I mean, what is that train doing in between the new terms anyway?
Yeah. I don't know.
Keep the trolley lady employed.
Seasonal employment is a blight.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe she has her own podcast to kill the time in between
It's
terms.
called Claws. I don't know why.
Harry, though, gets a lot of interesting looks as he's weaving his way through the different cars to try and find a place to sit. And let's face it, it's not year one anymore where he's should be getting stares from people. So I think, again, this is another moment for him where he continues to feel that level of isolation because these people are looking at him because of what happened at the end of last term, because of what news is being spread about him and Dumbledore. And that's got to just add to his level of feeling really shitty. Like, it's like he can't even duck into a compartment to just get away from everything. And on top of that, the one he ends up being in is one, at least it seems for right now, like he'd rather not be in.
Yeah.
And he just can't escape. I think that's the other thing. It's isolation, but then it's not being able to escape from a situation that you feel really anxious or nervous about being in.
All this bad press that the Daily Prophet is spewing on him, he's basically a pariah. He's basically like an outcast. He's been like people, all this bad press, people really have now built up in their heads that like a really just negative connotation against him. Like I just, it always brings me down realizing that the press has done this to a person who is ultimately innocent as well.
A 15-year-old, let's keep that in the back of our
Yeah,
minds.
exactly. And really the only solace in that is that he finds a train compartment with another outcast, you know, like he actually ends up being exactly where he needs to be. He just doesn't know it at the time or really appreciate it.
Right. So let's talk about Luna. She is introduced to us as having straggly, waist-length, dirty blonde hair, very pale eyebrows, and protuberant eyes that gave her a permanently surprised look. She had stuck her wand behind her ear for safekeeping, had chosen to wear a necklace of butterbeer caps, and was reading a magazine upside down. She did not seem to blink as much as normal humans. And she is introduced to us by Ginny initially, before they even go into the compartment, as Luna Lovegood, and good old Neville doesn't even want to sit with her.
What does Neville have to be choosy about, honestly?
Yeah.
Well, exactly. So I know we're going to get into this, but it's almost comical in a way, ironic, I guess, that this is how our outcasts, right, our group that we've been with for 5 books, is reacting to another outcast who I would say, though, definitely feels more comfortable in her own skin than some of these other people did.
Yeah. It's just one marginalized group is not going to get along intimately with another marginalized group or person just because they're both marginalized. It's not how it works. People are different. Everybody's different. And the fact that Neville doesn't want to sit with Luna is like telling. But also I'm glad that obviously with knowing the end of the book or knowing how the series progresses, they obviously rely on each other over time. And over the course of this book. So that feels, you know, a little bit better about sort of his snuffing of her right now. But it's kind of rough. And honestly, the movie adaptation, like the casting of Evanna Lynch was, I think, I know I intended to bring it up at some point, but I think it was a very, very good decision to be made. But, you know, honestly, it kind of softens some of these features that J.K. Rowling is writing about, protuberant eyes. And when Harry sits down in the train compartment, she is really staring at him, like really, 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 really staring at him and making him very uncomfortable. And book Luna is kind of like just cranked up to 1,000. Whatever the film adaptation is.
Yeah, like that wild laughter at Ron's joke was very surprising and something I had forgotten about because that's not in the movie. It's just like, whoa, what is up with this girl? But actually, yeah, just speaking of Evanna, maybe now we can just take that little aside. I just want to point out, some people might not know, she got that role because she is a huge Harry Potter fan, just like us. And she would visit MuggleNet.com all the time. And we had posted about the open casting call for Luna Lovegood. And she had responded to that open casting call, and that's how she got the role. So she is a true Harry Potter fan, and she brought that to set, and she made her own jewelry for Luna in the movie. I believe it was her earrings, right?
Yes.
She was just so perfect for that role. Like it's stunning how good she was. Like, yeah, there's some differences from the book, but I think she just brought it perfectly to the screen.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah. And
that's adorable.
Right?
Also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently she would like on set, like go over to the other actors and talk to them about MuggleNet. It was pretty funny. Emma, did you see like this top 10 list of the weird stuff like that. I don't know.
And Emma was like, what?
What? Oh, on MuggleNet, on the fan thing, yeah.
Listen, Luna, listen,
Right.
Evanna, I'm a fan, but not that kind of fan.
Well, and also I think worth mentioning that she listened to this podcast back in the day as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first time we did a live show with her, she wore her own MuggleCast t-shirt
she did,
that she
yeah.
had purchased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, she's been on the show several times since, but just very, very cool story.
She's one of the good eggs, that's for sure.
Right. And because she got into the, she wasn't an actress before Harry Potter. I was there on the Order of the Phoenix set visit, and she was so nervous. Like, the publicist was sitting right next to her when we were interviewing her, and she was just like, she couldn't put words together because that was one of the first times she was in front of press, and it was, and you look at her now, she's just like completely transformed, and has her own podcast, by the way, the Chick Peeps. It's a vegan podcast.
Yeah.
I know. I love her vegan activism.
Yeah. Anyway, so Luna Lovegood's crazy.
Well, she's such a gift to enter this this world and to the trio and Ginny and Neville's life. And I loved the point that, like, not all outcasts are the same and not all marginalized people should have to get along, right? But there is also something beautiful about the fact that because they are all marginalized, they are able to join together in a way and really understand one another. And I mean, this could be because I'm currently reading book 6, but I'm just like so moved by the fact that Harry invites Luna to the Slug Club, like, really because she is the person who he most wants to spend time with at the Slug Club party. And I just think that she, it's Casper's theory that she's sort of the priestess of the group, that she is like taking care of everybody. She certainly takes care of Mr. Ollivander at Malfoy Manor. And this is just a moment of, I think it's a great moment to remind us all that, like, you don't necessarily have the right first impression of somebody, and somebody can seem really off to you,
Yeah.
but they might end up being just like the greatest gift of your life.
I love that. Yeah. People can be really, really good for you, and it won't look that way at first.
Right.
Or it'll look just different, or you won't, we don't know what to expect, honestly. People are biased. First impressions are real kickers, and things, and you got to kind of overcome them. But I love the idea that, like, viewing Luna's entry into this world, as you said, Vanessa, but like in this chapter, but in this book, you get such a dark book that's, I don't want to say morbid, but very brooding, very bleak. And then you have somebody like Luna who is perfectly at peace with preposterous theories, and she's just a perfect antidote to some of the darker parts of this book.
And she exposes, so I think that the way that engaging with people who we don't usually engage with always exposes our own prejudices. Like, she exposes Hermione, right? Hermione is like, oh, that magazine is trash. And she's like, actually, my dad is the editor, right? And, like, we don't realize the ways in which we are racist or, like, any number of ways that we are prejudiced until we find ourselves in a totally foreign group.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, I suddenly realize that this thing that I say all the time is really uncomfortable to say when X person is in the room.
Yeah.
And I feel like Luna therefore makes everybody better through her difference.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. She does the same thing to Ron too, in a little bit of a different way, but just kind of, Ron is not very self-aware, I think, in terms of how he treated Padma at the Yule Ball, and Luna just speaks the truth and has no filter about it whatsoever. And I think that kind of contrasts Hermione's moment, right? Because everybody kind of laughs, like Ginny's laughing, or they're trying to contain their laughter, versus when she goes back at Hermione, it's kind of a very serious moment. So she's able to do both, but it's all through the it's all through speaking the truth about things. So she's also an extremely popular character, right? And comes along in the 5th book. I think that says something too, that you're being introduced past the middle of the series, yet she is such a fan favorite amongst readers.
Yeah, and I love that she is in Ginny's year, right? Like, she could just be a really precocious 11-year-old, like maybe Harry and his friends at like the compartments on the train, which for some reason they still haven't figured out how to like organize people on the train. They're always having to search for a compartment or something. There's nothing assigned. Like, if they had to accidentally sit with like first years and you could introduce Luna that way, J.K. Rowling instead is like, here's a character that's been here at Hogwarts all these years. She's in Ginny's year. So there's all this untold sort of story potential that you could plumb, because Luna is like Ginny's age. She's all their ages. She's just a year younger than Harry, Ron, and Hermione. So, like, I don't know. It's just brilliant introducing a character, not only 5 books into 7, to your point, Micah, but one that has like retconningly been there the whole time. We just didn't know about her because she's in Ravenclaw, and we don't really focus on the non-Gryffindor houses.
And I'd have to look back, but was she ever mentioned? Because J.K. Rowling has a tendency to name drop characters like one time in other books before they end up playing a larger role in future books. I think Cho Chang is a perfect example of that. Right. She gets a mention or a couple mentions because of the Quidditch match in Prisoner of Azkaban, and then she ends up obviously playing a larger role in Goblet of Fire. So that's just one that comes to mind. The other thing about this, though, with Ginny is that I wanted to just explore, like, is there more of this inner house bonding that goes on in Ginny's year? Because she seems to just, I wouldn't say she's friends with Luna, but it was interesting to me that she was connecting with a fellow 4th year who was in a different house, right? A lot of what we see with the trio is just limited to Gryffindor.
Yeah. Very much so. I mean, they have classes that are dual house classes. You would think that Harry, Ron, and Hermione would extend, friendship to herbology with the Hufflepuffs, that they would have a couple of Hufflepuff friends. But it's kind of a minor failure of the books that because Harry, Ron, and Hermione have to keep to themselves due to the plot, that there's no reaching across sort of the house divide, and that all of their friends are in Gryffindor. The alternative is, I mean, Dumbledore's Army really does later in this book, and it really seems to be pretty much the only thing that brings more than one house together. And even then, they're uniting under a common foe. But
sure,
I just get the sense that Ginny's popular.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's a big part of it. She's just more predisposed to know more people because she's just like the cool Weasley.
That's interesting.
She's also, I mean, she's not just cool. She's like deeply, deeply kind. And I think that she also has a predisposition to stand up to bullies, and Luna is someone who is constantly bullied. And so I think it is entirely possible that she knows who Luna is because she has defended Luna. But I also just think that this is a failure of Hogwarts. Like, the house system is so poorly done. And I am very anti-house as a pedagogical tool. I think it would be fine if it was arbitrarily assigned, but I think that assigning children at 11 based on their characteristic traits is like a really pernicious thing. And there doesn't seem to be any inter-house bonding at all.
That's a good point.
And they're set up to compete against each other for points, even in class when they have classes together. So the only times we see them interacting is this competition. And so there's just like no incentive to get to know people from other classes. Mm-hmm. So I don't, as much as it is the trio and the plot that keeps them isolated, it's also the institution of Hogwarts that keeps them isolated.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Totally. It's also a security nightmare.
I was trying to figure out a way to work that in right now. Yeah, I mean,
do you believe that, Vanessa, is Hogwarts a security nightmare?
I think Hogwarts is the weirdest frickin' school.
That's so
ever.
Dumbledore.
It is just like yeah, Dumbledore should definitely not be the head of the school. There should be someone with like a master's in education somewhere.
Uh-huh.
Like the pedagogy is like so deeply flawed. Security nightmare, yes, but like also why isn't there a guidance counselor? Like it is just a strange place.
I like your point about no inner house relationship building going on. That's a great observation. Everybody's very split, and then, like you said, competing against each other too. And by the way, to get back to one of your questions from a few minutes ago, Micah, David, who's listening live on Patreon right now, he says the Lovegoods got a name drop in Goblet of Fire. They're the Weasleys' neighbors.
Yep.
On their way.
Oh, that's right. When they're going, that's where I am with my kids right now.
Oh, okay.
We just read that chapter, so I should have known.
Yeah, it's in the Portkey scene, right?
Yep, exactly. In the Portkey.
There you go.
Very good.
No Luna, but the Lovegoods. So she did drop.
Yeah,
half
the
a seed
Lovegoods
there.
are the only other ones in the neighborhood.
Well, thanks, David.
Yeah.
And then I just did want to follow up on a point that Vanessa, you made. Ginny does speak up for Neville, talking about standing up for people, because Neville introduces himself after Harry is recognized, of course, and he introduces himself as nobody. And Ginny says, "You're not nobody." And I thought that was a very powerful moment too, because, and this ties into, Eric, something you were talking about with Dumbledore's army. This is the beginning. This is the formation of Dumbledore's army happening, whether they realize it or not, within this compartment. Yes, there's a lot of Gryffindors, but you also are starting to bring in another house in Ravenclaw with Luna. And I think it's important that all these characters are bonding, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah. I think definitely this is Luna is a critical ingredient, and what happens on the train is like definitely a gathering of the ingredients. The only thing you need, again, is that common enemy in Umbridge, who is not right now so, insanely, the inciting the action of creation of Dumbledore's army. But these people together, like it's really special. Like they just don't know how special it's all going to be, which is kind of really cool.
And this moment is also really interesting because Neville, I don't think he knows this at this point, but he was very close to not being nobody. I mean, the only thing that makes that so is that Voldemort chose Harry. It's very much like the Jesus Christ and the John the Baptist syndrome, where like either one of them could have been the Messiah, and it just so happens it was Jesus. So nobody ever thinks about John.
Well, Luna, I was almost a somebody, but that guy missing a nose decided Harry is the chosen one.
It is a funny joke, though, considering the prophecy is this book, and we find out about Neville later in this book that he should introduce himself as nobody. It's very clever. But then again, Harry on the night bus calls himself Neville Longbottom because in his estimation in year 3, Neville is a nobody. Nobody will know his name.
So sad.
Yeah. So, but did you guys remember, so how old were you all when this book came out? Did you read this book when it first came out? Was everybody like reading book 5?
I was like 13.
Okay. Like I was 15 and I remember reading this chapter, particularly this line. So like a bunch of people walk by. It's kind of a rotating compartment when they're all on the train together, and Cho comes in, and there's this line in the book that says he would have liked Cho to discover him sitting with a very cool group of people, laughing their heads off at a joke Harry just told. He would not have chosen to be sitting with Neville and Luna Lovegood, clutching a toad and dripping in stink sap. And the stink sap thing is disgusting, and it's totally very valid. But I remember being 15, and this line struck me as the ugliest one yet for Harry's mental state, because he's like, he doesn't want to be hanging with Neville and Luna. And sure, he doesn't know Luna, but like Neville's his friend. Neville's only ever been nice to Harry, and he feels like just this revulsion about where he's at and what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I thought, because I think at the time at 15 was also very concerned about being included in friends' things and fitting in and finding a group, that it really just resonated with me that Harry sort of rejected his present company in such a strong way. And now it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, that mattered a lot. And then you get into college and none of that really matters at all. But I was also wondering, like, who are the cool kids in Harry's mind? Is it Ron and Hermione? Because they're not exactly considered cool. But I think if Ron and Hermione were there, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, check me out, Cho. I'm with Ron and Hermione."
But don't you think that moments like that are that it's like an ecosystem? I think that if he wasn't covered in stink sap, it wouldn't bother him. Or if like the person that he doesn't really know, but it's called Luna Lovegood, was there. If he was just caught with Ginny and Neville holding a toad, he'd be like, "Hey, what's up?" But like, you just start making a list of all the things that make you look bad.
Yeah.
And then you become like the least gracious version of yourself. And by you, I mean me. Like I can just imagine being caught like in my Crocs and socks by like someone who I think is like awesome and cool, and being like, "Yeah, I'm rocking my Crocs and socks." If I'm like out walking my dog or like feeling good about myself. But like if I've just gotten like dog poop accidentally on me, suddenly the Crocs and socks is like, "Oh my God, I have dog poop and Crocs and socks." Like you know what I mean?
100%.
I feel like it's the whole ecosystem of the situation that he's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if he wasn't covered in stink sap, if he'd be like, "Yeah, look how nice I am. I'm hanging out with Luna Lovegood."
That's a really good point. Yeah.
I think to Cho, that would actually be admirable that he's hanging out with Neville and Luna.
Right. I agree. And I just think the stink sap makes everything feel awful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And smell
But what
awful.
do you think
Mhm.
Cho's opinion of Luna is? They're in the same house.
Yeah.
Right. And they're only a year apart.
So that must help, being in the same house.
Well, it depends. Does Cho think of her as Luna Lovegood or as just a special person?
I'd love to talk about that because Cho, what kind of a Ravenclaw, I think we have to pin what kind of a Ravenclaw Cho is on her. Because whether she's like the studious type that would make fun of Looney for like being different, or whether she's more the adventurous, curious Ravenclaw side, which would be more aligned with Luna's own vision. Because I think that's like kind of a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer situation with Luna, where the other reindeer are always making fun of her. Stealing her shoes, I think, makes it into the movie. All that kind of weird stuff. But then there are other Ravenclaws, I think, who would appreciate her beating to her own drum. And which is Cho. Cho is kind of like a jock, just like Harry. She's, an athlete. So would she make fun of Luna? Would she think that Luna is weird, or would she just be more, I don't know, accepting?
Looney, the Lovegood reindeer.
Oh, God.
Ravenclaw.
We just got told off
Andrew,
for our
we
singing. We just
I
got a
know.
negative.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Guys, I'm powering
Oh,
through and
so
ignoring
good.
that review about my singing 12 years ago to continue on.
Yeah, ignore that. That's hateful. Your singing is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh. Vanessa, to hear that from you, that means a lot.
It is sincere.
Thank you. Can you please write a review on iTunes about us and my great
Oh,
singing?
I'm gonna do it right now, and you think I'm kidding. Love when they sing. Love the joy. I think that Cho probably thinks that Luna is weird and awesome. I think she's like, "I don't want to spend my time with you because you're a lot." And like what we love about Luna's truth telling, I think would be exhausting to be around in real life all the time. I respect the hell out of it, but I'm just like taciturn enough that I'm like, we don't need to say all the things all the time. I think it is like the right strategy to walk the world. I just think I would find it difficult to be around. But Cho's an athlete, but she's an athlete who's like willing to sacrifice winning to like warn Harry about Dementors. And like I love Cho. I think she's perfect. So I think she's nice to Luna.
Yeah, that's a good point.
She stays loyal to Marietta, right? Like we know that Cho is willing to like take an unpopular stance in order to be protective of people.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
I love Cho. She's so beautiful and wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it was an instance where you're getting caught in a bad situation with your crush staring right at you, right? And I think there's something to be said for the fact, too, that Harry is a teenager. So it's not uncommon for him to think this way. Hindsight is always 20/20, and especially as adults, when we come back and read these books, we come at it with a different lens. But I think the likelihood is most of us probably would have acted in a similar way, or at least thought in a similar way as Harry in that particular situation. It's not an uncommon thought to have, but I do agree. It's not exactly like he's the cool kid at this moment either. So to kind of have that thought about Luna, it's tough. It is.
It's definitely very lifelike, like to your point. Like, we all have these thoughts. We all have absolutely had that experience of, oh, I'm embarrassed about the company I'm keeping right now, even though they're my friends. So good on J.K. Rowling for like writing this into a book, into a scene in a book, because it is very true to life.
And for me, at least for me growing up, it was mostly about the fact that like people I hung out people I hung out with, they definitely weren't the cool kids, but it was partly because like they just didn't take care of themselves. Like they may have smelled or wore really baggy clothing or just like didn't do anything with their hair. I had that cool wave going on, but nobody else really cared about themselves. So that's why I would be embarrassed.
I don't appreciate that.
He's not talking about you, Laura.
Or am
wink,
I?
wink.
No, but like, I mean, that is
those...
definitely the reason I bring that up is that is really not exactly the issue Harry has with Neville and Luna. I don't think it's just because of like their attitudes and their mannerisms.
He's also not having the best like start of term, right? Let's just think about what he's gone through in the last several weeks. So this just adds to it. It's just compounding the situation for him. But I do think it says something that this character has only been introduced for several pages in this book, and yet all of us seem to feel such a strong tie in terms of standing up and defending her. So one other piece of information that we do learn about when Ron and Hermione come back to the compartment is who the other prefects are that we would know from Harry's year. And was this something that we remember that we were looking forward to? Like, once we knew that Ron and Hermione had been named Gryffindor prefects, that we're like, okay, well,
yeah.
Or were we like really only concerned about Slytherin and didn't give a shit about Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw?
Yeah, pretty much.
Ouch.
We just don't know that many people. Like, these are names we've heard before, but maybe once or twice. And like, you know, Padma is a very generous reference, because obviously, like, you know, with having gone to the Yule Ball the year before, we know her a little bit better. But yeah, no, that's
the only reason she was made a prefect, was so that
audience recognition.
We would
Luna
recognize
could
her.
Throw shade.
Yeah.
No, Luna could throw shade at Ron. That's the whole reason why J.K. Rowling.
Oh, maybe that would be great if that were the case.
No,
Yeah,
I also think it's to show that like Ron and Harry messed up with awesome chicks, right? Like,
Yeah. I agree with that.
They completely objectified these women. They invited them because they were like the least ugly women that they could think of to invite. And it's like, hey, actually, there's like complete interiority and awesomeness to these people that you treated like crap. I have not forgiven Ron and Harry for that. Nor have they issued an apology.
It's such an unexpected dose of Luna medicine, or to like when she confronts Ron right here and there about Padma. But yeah, I think it's just audience name recognition, honestly. Like, Ernie Macmillan, at least he's not the other Hufflepuff that we know who's a real jerk to Harry. Zacharias Smith, hate that guy. Glad he comes up later. But yeah, that's it. Like, we don't know that many, to our point, kind of a recurring theme of lack of house knowledge, lack of inter-house relations. We just don't know that many other people. So I don't know who the alternative to these particular prefects would be, unless J.K. Rowling were going to mention names for the very first time, which is, as we said with the Lovegoods, very unusual that she would do that. They kind of all had to be people we already knew.
And one big question is why Draco was made a prefect, and we will discuss that in bonus MuggleCast this week, available on Patreon. We're going to review some interesting theories and debate if Dumbledore should have stepped in. It was probably Snape's decision, but why did Dumbledore not step in? So we'll talk about all that.
It's going to be great.
So one other piece that I thought was important to talk about in this chapter before we kind of wrap things up was the Quibbler. Luna is reading it, and we talked about the comment that Hermione made about, not really being a quality source of information. But Harry does recognize it as the paper that Kingsley mentioned in Arthur's office, saying there was a discussion about how Sirius would really love one of the stories that was written about him. Apparently, Sirius is innocent of the crimes against all those Muggles and Peter Pettigrew because he's actually the lead singer of a band called the Hobgoblins. His name is Stubby Boardman, and he was out canoodling one night with the woman who's giving the account of this story to Xenophilius Lovegood. And so Sirius...
rock and roll star? Like, what kind of music do the Hobgoblins play? It sounds like a punk rock type of band.
Apparently, it's the kind of band that attracts an audience that has turnips to throw at them. Unfortunately, I think there was probably a pretty bad concert that was not well received by the audience because Stubby Boardman retired after being hit in the ear with a turnip from the audience. So
what a snowflake.
If you had a turnip thrown at you at a live show, would you be like, I'm going to keep this going?
Yeah, that's rock and roll. That's what you got to do. People throw stuff up on the stage.
Totally rock and roll.
I would be heavily discouraged.
Have security throw out the person and keep going.
Right. You call that person out, somebody captures it on video, you go viral, you become huge.
I just think it would be, I think there is like a little joke about a diva, like being like Stubby Boardman was like such a diva, but then also he's sharing romantic candlelit dinners with Doris Perkis the night he was convicted of all those murders. So I don't know. I love the alternative fact thing that the Quibbler has going because it's, again, an antidote to the outrageous, deliberate lies, let's say, the more malicious lies that the Daily Prophet is printing.
Very true. And there's another one in there that's worth mentioning about the minister, Cornelius Fudge, and that, in fact, his nickname, which kind of sounds like his wrestling name, is Cornelius Goblin Crusher Fudge. And, this one, I'll be honest with you, I could see some truth to this. Not necessarily that, he crushes goblins, but what is the real relationship that he has with the goblin community? Especially knowing kind of how things are trending now with the ministry.
Right.
Yeah, definitely not a good one.
Yeah, there could be a little bit of truth to this story. Obviously, it's embellished quite a bit, but I think that's sort of the allure of a paper like the Quibbler, is that on the surface, the story seems, just completely out there, but there could be some legitimacy buried beneath all the wackiness.
Yeah. I mean, the Quibbler is such an enigma to me. What are we supposed to make of it? Are we supposed to be taking this as a quasi-serious publication?
No.
Why does it get to skirt down the middle? I just kind of hate that it's all over the place.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of J.K. Rowling showing a gray area there. It's just that this paper is so bold and Xenophilius is so brave for publishing something like this. He is a crackpot. Like, he is absolutely not. He does not seem to have journalistic integrity, which is hugely problematic, right? This kind of publication has no place in a world where facts matter.
Well, does the Daily Prophet at this point have journalistic integrity, and do facts matter to them? So I think that's the whole point of them introducing the paper like the Quibbler, is that you're like, yeah, it's all a bunch of rubbish, but at the same time, the mainstream newspaper is printing things that are not true about Harry. So,
but the trick with the Prophet is that it was established as a credible news source, so a lot of readers probably still believe everything in there.
Right, except they are able to swing it around, though, when they release Harry's interview in the Quibbler. Like, the Quibbler becomes a wonderful tool, or was it Rita Skeeter publishes for the Quibbler?
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, so they're able to take something like the Quibbler, because it's willing to print less than popular opinions, and they're able to make it sort of give it an air of legitimacy. Like Harry and his friends make it more honest, I think.
I also think in times of the rising fascism, papers like the Quibbler do begin to matter more, right? Because to your point, like the Daily Prophet, I think probably was once a credible newspaper, but has become, in this like rise of terror time, less credible. And because the ministry is less credible. And so I think that it just shows the like danger of monopoly, right? Like there should be more than one paper so that the Quibbler isn't the only antidote.
But just like, you can't take this paper, the Quibbler, seriously when every article includes this twisty line. But does he? It just automatically disqualifies it as a legitimate news source. It's corny.
It's got a tabloid feel to it. Yeah.
That's just how to put it.
For
it's
sure.
a tabloid. You don't know what's real and what's not. You look at these tabloids at the food store, and maybe some of that stuff is real, but most of it probably
Isn't it more like a blog? It's like a single writer paper.
That's true. Yeah.
So, Rita Skeeter will later be an exception to that, but I really think of it as just like Xenophilius' private blog.
Yeah.
Before we make our way to Hogsmeade, Harry gets one more visitor that shows up at the compartment that they're in, and it's Draco.
Oh.
And summarize it to say that, they go back and forth. Draco's been named prefect. He threatens Harry to keep in line. Harry's telling him shut up. Hermione's telling him to shut up. But he does tell Harry, quote, that he will be dogging his footsteps at school. So, going back to our discussion earlier on about Sirius, probably not the best idea for him to have come to King's Cross Station.
Nope.
It's just a real shame, because I know that it came out of a place of inner turmoil and desperation that Sirius, really wanted to see his godson off, but it was not in the end a smart move. And God, what a shock to the system that Draco knows Sirius's secret. Those characters never interacted. But thanks to Peter Pettigrew, everyone on the dark side knows the secret now.
And knows Harry and Sirius's close relationship right now, which comes into play later.
Yep.
So just a mess.
Yep.
Suffice it to say that so far the trip to school has not been a good one for Harry with everything that we've discussed. And it only gets better once he gets to Hogsmeade, because he doesn't hear that familiar voice that he's used to hearing calling out first years. Instead, it's Professor Grubblyplank that's doing it. And this goes back, actually, if you remember, I had brought up a couple episodes ago how Harry, once he was let off at his trial and he gets back to Grimmauld Place, there's this moment where he's like, I'm going to get to go down to Hagrid's hut and do all these different... This is the first example of something that he was really excited to be doing once he was back at school being taken away from him, because Hagrid is not there.
Good point.
And the chapter wraps up with another kind of moment of isolation for Harry, because for the first time he's able to see what is pulling these carriages that are going to take them up to the school. And we're not actually even told what they are at this point. We just get a description of them. But Luna walks past Harry and assures him that he's just as sane as her and that she can see them as well. So that makes Harry feel really good about himself. And that's where the chapter wraps up. Of course, later on we learn that they are thestrals and they can only be seen by those who have seen death. And that brings some clarity to the situation. But it's a little weird when Ron is staring straight into its face and can't see it.
They're called thestrals.
There had to have been some student who was like, trying to board the carriage and like was just like, oh, there's a huge open space here. I'm gonna walk in front of the carriage, and then like got thwapped by like walking directly.
Can they feel them, I wonder?
It would be really weird if they couldn't. Like,
right, that wouldn't make sense. Yeah.
Right, because like I know you can. Yeah, I know people can't see them, but like, oh, the people who can't see them fly them at the end of the book. Don't they? At least one or two kids.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, you can touch them. You could like walk right into them. That's a security nightmare. That's an injury kind of. That's an insurance nightmare, isn't it? To have kids like
just add it to the list at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fine. But
oh my God, I would read so much about the Hogwarts insurance policy.
It'd be great.
I have never thought about how to insure Hogwarts, and I'm like, oh, I want to know everything about the Hogwarts insurance policy.
Falling off the end of a rotating staircase that moves unexpectedly, like, I mean, the list is miles long.
Yeah, but then also you have to think about like how amazing Madame Pomfrey is. So I think that like she makes the risk much lower, in which case she should be asking for a really high salary because she saves them a lot of money on her insurance policy.
You know, for a chapter that opens with Ginny falling down 2 flights of stairs and ending up mostly okay, I'm actually glad we ended this on insurance talk.
Well, when I need a good policy, I go with Allstate. You're in good hands at Hogwarts with Allstate.
But Luna says to Harry that she could see them ever since she first came to Hogwarts, which is, of course, we know this from the additional writing from J.K. Rowling, it's because of her mother's death. Mm-hmm. Luna has witnessed the death of Pandora, a former Quidditch answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is the chapter. The Umbridge suck count remains unchanged at 7. Before we get to connecting the threads, it's time for a word from our second sponsor this week, and one who's coming to us just in time for the holidays. What I love about the holidays is the opportunity to reconnect with family. It's especially important for me because I live far away from everyone, and I see most of them just once a year, really. And what do I do when I see them? I love swapping stories and reliving moments together. But keeping those memories alive can be hard. And we here in the Muggle world don't have a pensive to relive them through. And these memories and stories from our elders can often fall away from the family as time and generations pass. And that's sad. We want our family's history to be preserved. That's why I'm giving my family the most meaningful gift this year, Storyworth. This is an incredible company who keeps your family's history alive and remembered. Storyworth is an online service that helps your loved ones tell the story of their lives through thought-provoking questions about their memories and personal thoughts. Every week, Storyworth emails your family member different story prompts, questions you've never thought to ask, like what have been some of your life's greatest surprises, and what's one of the riskiest things you've ever done? And here's the really cool part. After 1 year, Storyworth will compile every answered question and photo you choose to include into a beautiful keepsake book that's shipped for free. You never know what family history Storyworth will uncover, and what I love about Storyworth is that these memories are being preserved. This is such a great gift idea for a parent, a grandparent, or any family member. It's a unique opportunity to connect and to store your family's stories. Otherwise, how do you keep them? And how do you remember to collect the stories? Storyworth does it all for you. Preserve and pass on memories with Storyworth, the most meaningful gift for your family. Sign up today by going to storyworth.com/muggle. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/muggle for $20 off. Laura, what are some threads between this book and others?
Yeah, so this was a really fun one. With connecting the threads, Vanessa, we like to look back at the books as though Goblet of Fire is sort of the centerpiece. So then books 1 and 7, 2 and 6, and 3 and 5 all correspond to each other. And there was some really cool stuff between this chapter of Order of the Phoenix and chapter 5 of Prisoner of Azkaban, where the trio are traveling back to Hogwarts on the Hogwarts Express. So the first one is who the trio meet in both of these cases. In Prisoner of Azkaban, they meet Lupin on the Hogwarts Express when they can't find an empty compartment, and they just find one with this disheveled looking man sleeping in the compartment. What's funny about this to me is that they express a little bit of apprehension about Lupin, but it's not nearly to the level of what they express about Luna in Order of the Phoenix, which makes me think that there's maybe some unconscious bias at play. But I also really like the moon imagery that comes into play here. So, of course, we have Lupin, who is Moony. He is a werewolf. He is transformed by the moon. And then we have Luna Lovegood, who, I mean, of course, the name is a connection, but she is also very much kind of a moony personality. She's very dotty, as they expressed in the book. Mm-hmm. So then there's this feeling of isolation on the Hogwarts Express, in both cases for Harry. So in Prisoner of Azkaban, Chapter 5, Harry's the only one who's affected by the Dementor on the train to such an extreme amount. And he feels kind of isolated and embarrassed by that and is wondering, why am I the only one this happened to? And likewise, in Order of the Phoenix, he feels really isolated and left behind when Ron and Hermione go to their first Prefect meeting. Finally, the horseless carriages get a special mention in Chapter 5 of Prisoner of Azkaban after riding the Hogwarts Express. And Harry now notes that he can see the creatures that are pulling the carriages. So this was just a really nice chapter of threads that directly correlated back to Chapter 5 of Prisoner of Azkaban. And I don't think this was unintentional. I think J.K. Rowling's a genius.
I'm starting to think that too. Thank you, Laura. Time now for MVP of the week. I'm going to give it to Luna because she quickly becomes a fan favorite character, and I like that she's just an unexpected surprise for Harry and makes Harry feel very uncomfortable in front of Cho. So thank you, Luna.
I'll give it to Ginny just for sticking up for people. She sticks up for Neville. She makes the introduction to Luna, and she fell down the stairs and still had a hell of a chapter, so she's my MVP of the week.
I'm going to give it to the Quibbler because this is our first introduction to it, and it proves to be pretty important later on.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to give my MVP. I couldn't decide between two people, but one of them is Tonks because she's able to, it's very kind of a throwaway thing, but she's able to use her metamorphosis capabilities to create the appearance of an old woman, and she kind of walks with them to King's Cross, and it's very understated, but like, there's your perfect disguise right there. Sirius could learn something from that. And then there's also, in the Quibbler, there's a guy who claims he went to the moon on a broom, and I'm just gonna give it to him too, because that's an outrageous claim.
Oh my!
The first wizard on the moon. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it to Cho because so few people are able to make Harry feel like not the hottest thing around. And Cho with just her presence can make him feel small in a, like, I think in a really humbling and important way. So I'm going to give it to Cho.
Okay. And now let's rename the chapter. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 10, Sirius and the Hobgoblins, playing at a venue near you.
Do they sing, what was it? Who'd you say? Luna the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Luna, Looney, the Lovegood reindeer, Ravenclaw.
There it is.
Screaming goat.
Harry Potter the Order of Phoenix and the Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 10, Bad Dog.
Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 10. I wish that I could be like the cool kids.
Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 10, Moon Frogs. The guy who flew to the moon on a broom brought back moon frogs to prove that he had been there. So, whatever.
Available in chocolate form, I hope.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. I love it. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 10, Seen Upside Down. Just seemed like a very J.K. Rowling way to say something.
Yeah. If you have any feedback about today's discussion, feel free to send it in. You can go to MuggleCast.com and you'll find a contact form. You can also email MuggleCast@gmail.com. You can also send a voice memo that way if you want to record one on your phone and just email to that same address. Time now for Quizzitch.
Yep, last week's question, what does Neville get for his 15th birthday? Turns out it's Mimulus Mimbletonia, a very interesting and unique item, I guess, for a birthday present, but he got it from his uncle Algie in Assyria. And the people who submitted the correct answer to us over on Twitter include Ann Smith, Lightning McJingles, Kate Yang, Daniela, Marie, Count Ravioli, Vanessa Cho, Jason King, Amber Forrester, Stacy Suvrink, and Erica, as well as others. We will mention all of you over on Twitter directly, but be sure, when participating, to @reply us and use hashtag Quizich so that we see your replies and you might get a shout out on our show. Next week's question: who is the first Gryffindor, the first new Gryffindor, during Harry's 5th year?
Okay. Vanessa, thanks for coming on today. It was so nice to have you on.
This was so fun. Thank you so much. And yeah, you all are a delight.
Absolutely. So we can find you at Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. How do we find that online, your show online?
So we're on the Twitter at HP Sacred Text, and same with Instagram. And we have a Facebook discussion group. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, you can find us.
All right. Excellent. Thank you again so much. It was so great to have you on. And, it's nice hanging out with fellow Harry Potter podcasters.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you out there would like to follow us, we are available on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, username MuggleCast. We would also really appreciate your support at Patreon. Join our community today at patreon.com/MuggleCast, and you will receive new installments of bonus MuggleCast, for example. And like I said, this week we will be discussing why Draco was made a prefect, what theories we have around why and how that happens. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Eric.
Micah.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Vanessa.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.